I got a question from JT Sports on Twitter. He writes in and asks, should the Detroit Lions draft Kyle Hamilton second overall? Now, before I answer this question, I want to tell you guys that my old Twitter account recently got hacked and it got disabled, so I had to create a new one. So if you guys have any questions that you guys would like to have answered potentially on the podcast, follow me on Twitter at JTSports__. Submit your questions there, and potentially your question could be answered on a episode or segment of the JT Sports Podcast. Now, I'm not going to promise to answer every single question on the podcast. However, I will pick a couple of good questions that I get asked and I will feature them on the podcast. So if you guys want your questions answered potentially on a episode, go ahead and submit them on Twitter at JTSports__. So when you look at the Detroit Lions and the possibility of them drafting Notre Dame safety Kyle Hamilton, a lot of people are going to tell you that you shouldn't draft a defensive back in the top 5 or the top 10. Normally you see quarterbacks, offensive tackles, and pass rushers going in the top 5 and the top 10 the majority of the time. However, Kyle Hamilton isn't your typical defensive back. You know, like, this is somebody who did it all at Notre Dame. He pretty much played safety, but he was utilized in the slot, sometimes as like another linebacker in certain scenarios. So with Kyle Hamilton, like, when you have somebody who has this kind of skill set and this kind of versatility, it's pretty reasonable to make the argument for them being drafted in the top 5 and the top 10. You know, this isn't your traditional coverage safety or your traditional run support safety. This is somebody who can cover tight ends, running backs in the passing game. This is somebody who can help out against the run, get tackles behind the line of scrimmage. This is also somebody who has really good ball skills and is really good in coverage. So Kyle Hamilton can do it all. When you have somebody who can have this kind of contribution on defense in the run game and in the passing game, it's definitely fair to make the conversation of them being one of the first players to get taken off the board. And Kyle Hamilton is one of the most talented prospects in this draft class. To me, he's the best defensive player in this draft class. But, you know, it's funny because Kyle Hamilton got a lot of love before the combine. And then after his combine performance, a lot of people are now starting to harp on him. And then, you know, there are a lot of people now, since we're in the midst of draft season, who are now starting to dive into the film. And some people's first impressions of Kyle Hamilton aren't all that impressive. And I can understand, because you look at Kyle Hamilton, he's 6'4", 220 pounds, and him running a 4.59 is kind of a disappointment. I'm not even going to lie to you, because I'm thinking Kyle Hamilton was going to be like this freak athlete who was going to test crazy and off the charts and whatnot, and it didn't really happen. But that doesn't mean he's not a great athlete. He's a phenomenal athlete. I mean, he has great range, great length. He's very fluid for his size. Like, he's a great athlete. He's just not an explosive athlete. You know, he's really, like, he has a really good football IQ. He's really good when it comes to diagnosing plays. When he sees it, he's coming down. Like, that's the thing that I don't think not enough people talk about with Kyle Hamilton. Like, this guy is a natural football player. Like, he has a natural nose for the football. Like, you guys saw the ridiculous interceptions that he had against Florida State. One which he literally tracked the ball from halfway across the field and intercepted it on the sidelines. Like, it was a ridiculous play. Like, if, you know, I didn't get a copyright strike for every single time I wanted to show, you know, some clips, I would show you guys the clips. But, you know, YouTube and their done behind little fair use system, or their done behind copyright system. But you look at Kyle Hamilton. when he gets inside the box, this guy is a monster. And for Detroit, like, if you're Dan Campbell and defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn, you probably might have to go through a little bit of trial and error to find out what is the best way to utilize Kyle Hamilton. Because inside the box, this dude is like another linebacker. He's like making plays behind the line of scrimmage. He's shutting down tight ends and running backs. He's really effective inside the box. And a lot of people believe that, that he potentially could switch to linebacker. And I definitely feel like he should only change to linebacker if he can't play safety at a really high level. But I think that he can. However, it is worth noting that there are a lot of risk that comes with Kyle Hamilton. And drafting Kyle Hamilton would be more of a gamble than Detroit using the second overall selection to draft, Aiden Hutchinson or Kayvon Thibodeau, because when you have players on the defensive end who are utilized in different positions on the defensive side of the football in college, oftentimes they're okay or good in certain areas of their game, but they don't have any great areas of their game. So even though Kyle Hamilton looked really impressive with the ability to be versatile and play several different positions for Notre Dame, when he gets to Detroit, most likely that versatility is kind of going to go down a little bit. You're not going to be able to utilize him as much if you're the Detroit Lions, like Notre Dame was able to use him. And the reason why I say that is because, I don't really think that he's going to be covering a lot of receivers in the slot, because even though he is really good in coverage against tight ends and running backs, his coverage skills against wide receivers aren't really all that great. They're definitely a drop down compared to his coverage abilities against running backs and tight ends. Against receivers, not all that great. And when you're going against slot receivers in the NFL, like, you have to have really good burst and really good short area quickness, something that Kyle Hamilton doesn't really have. So I don't really think that we're going to see Kyle Hamilton lining up and guarding receivers in the slot, because I just don't think that he has the functional short area quickness and burst to be able to play the slot position at a high level. However, I do feel like he's going to be really good coming downhill against the run and then run support and whatnot. He also is going to be really good in nickel and dime packages, can kind of be used as like another linebacker in a sense. So for Kyle Hamilton, really his success is going to be dependent on, one, the creativity of the defensive coordinator that he's going to. Two, you have to have a defensive coordinator that is going to be patient with Kyle Hamilton, and also a defensive coordinator that is going to be willing to experiment, because you saw Michael Parsons. He was very versatile. He played linebacker and he also played edge, but there was a learning curve. So when you have somebody like Kyle Hamilton, you have to find a defensive coordinator that can kind of unpack things in a way that isn't going to confuse him and doesn't end up in him having a disastrous rookie season. Because with Arizona, remember when they first drafted Isaiah Simmons? He barely was touching the field. Like, his NFL debut was terrible. He had a lot of missed assignments. He wasn't all that great in coverage. And Arizona had to keep moving Isaiah Simmons around until they was able to find a good place for him that was best able to utilize his strengths. So for the Detroit Lions and their defensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn, I do think potentially there is going to be a little bit of trial and error when it comes to drafting Kyle Hamilton. And a lot of people probably going to make the argument and say that JT, taking the safety at 2 is dumb, because we already know that pass rushers result in more wins and they impact the game more than safeties, which it's true to an extent. And the reason why I say to extend is because, yes, pass rushers impact the game and a little bit more than what great safeties do. But if you have a truly elite safety like a Tyrann Mathieu and a Minkah Fitzpatrick that can contribute against the run in the pass and are also really good when it comes to covering running backs and tight ends, your defense is going to be taken to another level. And on top of that, when you have a safety that can do this many things, you have a safety that pretty much is giving you maybe 2 or 3 wins. So I would take 2-3 wins compared to maybe a pass rusher that may only get me 2-3 wins. You feel me? And I understand that the risk with Kyle Hamilton is a lot higher compared to the risk if you were to draft Aiden or Kayvon Thibodeaux out of Oregon. But I just feel like you look at the upside. Like you look at the upside of having Kyle Hamilton really reach his potential. You have somebody who pretty much may end up being the best defensive player in the football, because it's not too many players in the NFL that not only can take away a team's best tight end, but not only help out in the run game, but also like affect the game in like that many ways. Like you don't really see that a lot, which is why we're having this conversation and the question being asked of maybe Kyle Hamilton going number 2 to Detroit. Because if I'm Detroit and I'm their general manager, I pulled the trigger, because Detroit is a team that has a lot of needs that obviously aren't going to be filled after the draft and obviously aren't going to be filled when the season starts. However, when you have a team that has a lot of needs, why not go for the player that can, kind of help into areas compared to, some of the other prospects who may only be able to help out in one. And I'm not saying that Aiden Hutchinson and Kayvon Thibodeaux aren't good against the run. Both those guys are pretty good against the run. All I'm saying is that you're going to have a safety in Kyle Hamilton who is going to help the run defense, which your linebacker unit isn't all that great. So when Kyle Hamilton's on the field, he's kind of like another linebacker. You're going to improve the secondary by drafting Kyle Hamilton. So you have somebody who's good in pass coverage in the back end. Well, at least I think he should hold up in coverage pretty well, despite the fact that he doesn't have, the speed that you would like him to have or you expect him to have. I still think he'll be pretty fine in coverage, because people forget Justin Simmons, safety for the Denver Broncos, ran a 4.61 when he was coming out, and he's perfectly fine. He's one of the best safeties in the league right now. So I'm not too worried about Kyle Hamilton in coverage. So you have somebody who can guard tight ends, running backs, get in on the run game, and also, hold up his end of the bargain and be what a safety's supposed to be, the last line of protection in the back end. You have somebody who can do 4 things, and this is only one player. So you're pretty much getting 3 players in one, in my opinion, the way I look at it. So if I'm the general manager for the Detroit Lions, I take Kyle Hamilton at 2. He can impact the game in more ways than what Aiden Hutchinson and Kayvon Thibodeaux could, even though those guys may impact it at a way higher level than what Kyle Hamilton may be able to do it. But I think that Kyle Hamilton, if I'm Detroit, he would be my pick. And also with Kyle Hamilton, if he ends up going crazy right off the back, Detroit is going to have a Pro Bowler and an All-Pro. So that's something that you will like to see when you have, a new regime pretty much going in. So I would take Kyle Hamilton with the 2nd overall pick, but you guys let me know who you guys would take 2nd overall if you were the Detroit Lions.